I still remember the exact moment everything shattered. It was 3 days before the wedding, a morning soft with sunlight, filled with the quiet confidence that I was finally stepping into the life I'd always dreamed of. I was standing in the foyer of their mansion, still wearing the smile I'd walked in with, unaware that I was about to lose every piece of myself. His parents didn't even ask me to sit. They were already waiting, his mother on the velvet sofa, his father standing near the fireplace like a judge preparing for a verdict. And then they slid a crisp stack of papers across the marble table, straight toward me. A prenup. Thick. Heavy. Almost smug in how cleanly it was stapled. His mother's voice cut the room in half. "Sign this," she said, "and we'll know you're not after our money." I blinked. Not because I hadn't expected a prenup. Rich families protect their wealth, but because of the way she said our. Like her son belonged to them, like his future belonged to them, and I was just a guest borrowing their heir. I looked at him, at the man I was supposed to marry, expecting him to laugh, to defend me, to at least stand beside me. But he didn't move. Not a step. Not a word. He just stared at the floor, like he was waiting for me to handle it on my own. His father leaned in and said, "This is standard. If you have nothing to hide, you'll sign." I felt something inside my chest twist. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Like I had already been tried and convicted in a courtroom I didn't even know I'd walked into. I tried to breathe, but the air felt sharp. 3 days before the wedding? I whispered. His mother smirked. Better late than never. Their smiles weren't smiles. They were warnings. They thought they had already won. They thought their money, their name, their mansion gave them the right to humiliate me. But humiliation wasn't the only thing in that room. There was something else. Something they didn't see. I lifted the paper slowly, my fingers brushing over the expensive embossed letterhead. I could almost hear their thoughts. She's desperate. She's weak. She'll sign. They always sign. But they didn't know me. Not really. For a moment, the room spun with memories of the past year. The first date, the late-night conversations, the warmth of his hand in mine, the way he promised he wasn't like them. The way he told me he loved me because I was real. Authentic. Different. Now, standing here with this contract shoved in my face, I wondered whether any of it was real at all. I looked at him again. He finally raised his head. His eyes were tired, desperate, almost apologetic. But not brave. Not enough to stand up to them. Not enough to choose me. His father crossed his arms. His mother tilted her chin, already pleased with herself. "Sign it," she repeated. I felt the sting behind my eyes, but I refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not in front of them. I wouldn't give them that victory. Instead, I inhaled slowly, 1 steady breath, 2. And then I asked the question that made the entire room shift. What happens if I don't? His mother's smile widened, thin, cold, rehearsed. "Well," she said, "then you and my son will not be getting married." He flinched when she said it. I noticed. But he didn't interrupt. He didn't defend me. He didn't dare. Silence settled like dust. Heavy. Unforgiving. I lowered the prenup again, letting it rest on the table. My hands weren't shaking. Something inside me had gone quiet. Too quiet. His father stepped forward. "This is for the best," he said. "It protects everyone." Everyone. Meaning them. Their money. Their reputation. Their precious legacy. Not me. Never me. I thought of all the moments he told me I was his world. All the promises he made. That he'd leave his parents' shadow. That he'd build his own life. That I'd be safe with him. But now, I was standing alone in a house that didn't want me. With a family that never respected me. Beside a man who wouldn't lift a finger to protect me. Something inside me cracked. A small, final fracture I couldn't hide anymore. He took a step toward me. "Please," he whispered. "It's just paper. It means nothing." But that was the problem. It meant everything. Not legally, emotionally, morally, symbolically. If this was how they treated me before the wedding, what would the marriage look like? I closed the file slowly, sliding it back toward them. His mother's smirk faltered for the first time. I'll think about it, I said. But I wasn't thinking. I was watching. Watching how easily they dismissed my worth. Watching how he let them. And, in that moment, standing in the cold sunrise of their perfect mansion, I realized something terrifying. The prenup wasn't a real test. They were. And they thought I would fail. But the next 72 hours proved something they never expected. I wasn't the one who was unworthy. They were. I drove home that night with a prenup folder still sitting on the passenger seat, untouched, unopened again, almost mocking me under the passing streetlights. But the strange thing was I wasn't crying. I thought I would. I thought I'd break down the moment I closed their heavy mansion doors behind me. But instead, there was silence inside me. The kind that comes right before a storm. When I reached my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I just stood there in the dark, holding my keys, breathing in the emptiness. I kept hearing his father's voice. If you have nothing to hide, you'll sign. And his mother's smirk, like she'd already read the ending of my story. But I wasn't always this version of myself. Quiet, controlled, frozen. There was a time when my life felt warm, simple, honest. I grew up in a small town with a single mom who worked double shifts and still made time to listen when I cried about school or life or heartbreak. She didn't have money. We didn't have fancy things. But we had dignity. We had kindness. We had a home built on honesty, not power. So when I met him, it felt like the universe was finally being gentle with me. We met at a bookstore. Yes, the cliché kind of meeting everyone dreams about. He bumped into a table, dropped 3 books, and I laughed before I could stop myself. He looked up, cheeks red, and said,
"I swear I'm coordinated."
"Just not today." That single sentence, that silly, honest awkwardness, melted something inside me. He wasn't like anyone I knew. He wasn't arrogant like rich guys I'd seen at my college. He wasn't cold like men who pretend they're too important to feel. He was warm.
Human. Real. Or at least he seemed that way.
Our first date was at a tiny coffee shop where he told me he hated the pressure of being the only son of a legacy family. He told me his parents only cared about money, about appearances, about maintaining the family name. He told me he wanted to escape that life, build a future that wasn't controlled by them. I believed him.
Of course I did.
Why wouldn't I? He made promises, the kind that tastes like hope, the kind you hold on to when everything else feels uncertain. He said, "You're the first person who makes me feel like I can breathe." I held that sentence close for months. Our relationship grew fast, not in a reckless way, but in a way that felt inevitable. Late-night drives, whispered dreams, weekends in the city, his head on my shoulder as if he was hiding from a world I didn't understand. He told me he loved me after 4 months. He proposed after 9. My mom cried when she saw the ring, not because it was expensive, though it was, but because she saw how happy I was. She held my face and said, "Just make sure he loves you the way you love him." I promised her he did. But looking back now, I think he loved the idea of me, not the reality. Not the woman who grew up without luxury, without privilege. Not the woman who didn't fit neatly into his parents' curated world. The first time I met his mother, she scanned me from head to toe with a smile so sharp it almost cut me. "You're different," she said.
Different.
The word hung in the air like perfume sprayed in the wrong room. His father shook my hand firmly, too firmly, holding it for 1 second longer than necessary. "Where did you study again?" I told him. He nodded, but the judgment was already settled behind his eyes. The worst part? He noticed all this. He saw how his parents treated me. The coldness, the interrogations, the subtle digs wrapped in fake politeness. And every time I tried to talk to him about it, he'd say, "They'll get used to you. Give them time."
Time.
How much time does it take for people to see beyond their bank accounts? The first red flag appeared on a quiet Sunday morning, months before the prenup incident. We were having breakfast, pancakes, fruit, coffee, and he said, "Maybe you should quit your job after the wedding. My mom thinks." I didn't even let him finish. "Your mom thinks." He looked away, embarrassed. "Well, she believes it's better for the family image if." I felt my stomach drop. Image. Reputation. The same words his parents worshipped. That was the first time I felt it. The beginning of the shift. The subtle bending of who he was becoming. A month later, he asked me why I didn't dress more elegantly when we visited his parents. Another time, he asked me to avoid mentioning my mom's job because they don't understand those kinds of careers. Those kinds. As if my mother, the strongest woman I knew, was something to be ashamed of. I ignored those red flags. I explained them away. I convinced myself love was stronger. I told myself he wasn't them, he couldn't be. But then came the day they invited me to dinner. Just me, not him. And I sat in their dining room under a chandelier worth more than my mother's entire life savings, while they subtly interrogated me about my background, my finances, my intentions, my future plans. Every question dipped in sugar. Every comment dipped in poison. He apologized afterward, but only half-heartedly. They're just cautious, he said. They've had people try to take advantage before. He didn't realize it then, but that was the moment he began choosing them. The prenup wasn't the beginning. It was the confirmation. But the real breaking point, the real twist in this story, was still waiting just around the corner. And none of them, not him, not his parents, knew what I was about to find out. The morning after the prenup incident, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest, the kind that doesn't come from sadness alone, but from clarity. Real clarity. The kind that shows you the truth you were avoiding for far too long. He texted me around 10. Can we talk? Just 3 words.
No apology. No explanation.
Just an invitation to another round of confusion. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Come over. When he walked into my apartment, he looked nervous, almost scared. Like he knew there was no version of this conversation where he walked away clean. He shut the door quietly, then leaned against it. Like he needed something to hold him up. I shouldn't have let them pressure you yesterday, he said softly. They ambushed you.
I'm sorry.
But he didn't move closer. Not even one step. I folded my arms, waiting. What else? He swallowed. There's something you should understand about my parents. I almost laughed. I understand them perfectly. They don't respect me. He flinched at that. They're trying to protect the family. From me. The silence that followed hurt more than the prenup. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he always did when he was caught. It's not about you. It's about trust. Trust. I repeated. You're asking me to marry into a family that doesn't trust me? He hesitated. It's complicated. No, it's not, I said. It's very simple. They don't want me in your life unless I sign control of everything away. He looked away again. And that moment, that tiny motion, told me exactly what I needed to know. He wasn't on my side. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. Just sign it, he whispered. It doesn't change how I feel about you. My breath caught. That's the problem. It changes how I feel about you. He finally moved closer, kneeling in front of me. His hands reached for mine. I didn't give them.
Please.
My parents said if you don't sign, they won't approve the marriage. There it was. The truth stripped bare. And what do you say? I asked quietly. Whose approval matters to you? He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were wet. I can't go against them, he whispered. They're my family. A sharp, cold realization settled into my bones. On the day I said yes to him, I thought I was joining a marriage. But now I could see. I was marrying a man who never grew out of his parents' shadow. You want me to prove myself, I said. You want me to sign a document just so they feel safe? He nodded helplessly. It's just a formality. No, I said.
A kis is a formality.
A dance is a formality. A prenup shoved in my face 3 days before my wedding. That is humiliation. He wiped his face with his sleeve.
I'm sorry.
I'm really trying.
No, y whisperar.
You're choosing between 2 sides, and you're choosing them. His shoulders slumped. Like he'd been waiting for me to say it. Like he already knew it was true. I love you, he said softly. I want this life with you. You want me, I corrected. But you want them more.
He didn't deny it.
Not this time. A long, painful quiet filled the room. The kind you can't fix. The kind you can't pretend your way out of. Finally, he stood up and walked to the prenup folder I had brought back from their house. He opened it slowly, flipping through the pages like he was reading something sacred. His voice broke as he said, "They're scared you'll take half if we ever divorce." I stared at him. "And you? Are you scared too?" He looked up. Yes. There it was. Truth. Not pretty. Not comforting. Not something you put vows around. Just truth, sharp, honest, and devastating. "You think I would marry you for money?" I asked. He whispered, "I don't know." That sentence. Not the prenup, not his parents, not the humiliation. That was the moment everything inside me cracked. He didn't trust me. Not enough to build a life. Not enough to marry. Not enough to choose me over the fear his parents planted in him. I stepped back. Farther than I expected. Farther than he could reach. "I'm not signing it," I said firmly. "And if that means there's no wedding, then there's no wedding." His face collapsed. He grabbed his coat, then paused at the door like he wanted one last moment to change everything.
But he didn't speak. He didn't fight. He didn't choose me.
He just whispered, "I'll talk to them again." But I knew he wouldn't. I knew he couldn't. Not when fear controlled him more than love ever had. When he walked out, the door didn't slam. It closed softly, almost respectfully, like even the door knew something important had ended. And as I stood there in the dim light of my apartment, I finally understood. A prenup wasn't the real betrayal. Doubt was. What I didn't know yet was that the biggest betrayal of all was still coming. When he left that day, he didn't just walk out of my apartment. He walked out of the version of us I had been holding together with hope, forgiveness, and every quiet compromise I had made just to keep peace with his world. But now, peace felt like a thing I'd imagined, not something we had ever truly shared. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I missed him, but because everything suddenly made sense. Every dismissive comment. Every time he chose silence over standing up for me. Every time his mother's voice carried more weight in the room than mine did. By morning, clarity had settled in my stomach like cold steel. It wasn't heartbreak. It was recognition. Recognition of the truth I hadn't been brave enough to accept. Around noon, his sister texted me. Out of nowhere. "Are you coming tonight?" I stared at the message, confused. Coming for what? She replied instantly. "Family dinner. Wedding week tradition. Mom said she invited you." Invited me. As if nothing had happened. As if they hadn't thrown a contract in my face and questioned my entire existence. I typed a simple response. Yes. Because I needed to see them. All of them. One last time, before I decided the rest of my life. When I arrived at their mansion that evening, the air felt heavier than usual. Like the walls themselves knew how much poison had been spoken inside them. But I walked in with my spine straight, my chin steady. I wasn't the same girl who stood here yesterday. His mother greeted me with that same perfect smile, the one that never reached her eyes. "I'm glad you came," she said. "Big week ahead. Big week." As if the prenup never happened. As if their words didn't slice me open. His father gave me a long, measured stare. Cold. Evaluating. I wondered if he could still see the threat in me. But the strangest thing? He wasn't there. My fiancé. He hadn't arrived yet. His sister took my hand and whispered, "I'm sorry about yesterday. They do this. It's not you." But that apology felt like a bandage on a gunshot wound. Too small. Too late. We sat down for dinner. A long, intimidating table with crystal glasses and gold-edged plates that somehow made the room feel colder. His parents sat at the head. I was placed near the middle, like a polite guest. His mother lifted her wine glass. "I hope yesterday didn't upset you too much," she said lightly. "Everyone gets one before marriage. It's normal."
I ser det her.
Normal? Nothing about humiliation is normal. Nothing about distrust is normal. Nothing about asking a woman to prove her worth 3 days before her wedding is normal. Before I could speak, the door opened. He walked in, looking tired, tense, almost defeated. His eyes found mine instantly, and I could tell he hadn't convinced them of anything. He hadn't fought for me. His posture already told the story. He sat down next to me, lowering his voice. I tried talking to them, he whispered. But they won't change their minds. Of course they wouldn't. People who think they own the world never change their minds. They just expect you to adjust yourself until you fit their shape. His mother cleared her throat. So, she said brightly, have you given any thought to the prenup? The table went silent. Even the silverware froze halfway to mouths. I felt every pair of eyes on me. Not with concern, not with care, but with expectation. Like they were sure I'd eventually give in. Like they always won because money always wins. I sat upright, calmer than I had ever been. Yes, I said. His mother's smile widened.
I'm glad.
It's for everyone's best interests. I'm not signing it. Her smile died instantly. His father's jaw tightened. His sister froze. My fiancé exhaled shakily. I continued, my voice steady. I'm not marrying into a family that sees me as a threat. I'm not marrying a man who's too afraid to stand up for me. And I'm not signing a contract I was handed like an accusation. His mother's face shifted, from polite superiority to naked hostility. You're being unreasonable. No, I said. I'm being honest. His father leaned forward. You're throwing away a future most people would beg for. And that was the moment everything inside me clicked. I don't beg, I said softly. My mother raised me with nothing, but she raised me with dignity. And I'd rather have nothing again than be owned by people like you. The table went dead silent. My fiancé's voice cracked as he whispered, please don't do this, we can fix.
No, interrupta.
You could have fixed this. Yesterday. By choosing me. By defending me. By believing in me. His eyes filled with tears. But mine didn't. Not anymore. His mother scoffed. You'll regret this. I stood up, pushing my chair back quietly. No, I said. I regret ignoring the red flags. I regret thinking love was enough. I regret believing your son wasn't like you. His father glared. His mother clenched her jaw. My fiancé reached out to grab my hand, but I stepped back. You don't trust me, I whispered. And I won't marry someone who doubts my intentions more than he believes in my heart. I picked up my purse, straightened my shoulders, walked toward the door. No one stopped me. As I stepped outside into the cool air, I didn't feel broken.
I didn't feel lost.
I felt
free.
But life had one more twist waiting for me. A twist I never saw coming. And it arrived the very next morning. The morning after I walked out of that mansion, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing.
Calls.
Voicemails. Messages. Mostly from him. Some from his sister. None from his parents, of course. They never reached out unless they wanted something. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the city wake up. Funny how life can fall apart and still the world keeps moving, cars keep honking, the sun keeps rising, as if nothing extraordinary happened. But something extraordinary had happened. I chose myself. For the first time in months, maybe years, I chose my dignity over someone else's approval. Around noon, someone knocked on my door. 3 light taps. Then silence. I knew it was him before I even opened it. He stood there, hair messy, eyes red from crying, shirt wrinkled like he'd been up all night. He looked nothing like the confident, privileged man I first met. He looked lost. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. I stepped aside, but I didn't move closer. He walked inside slowly, like he wasn't sure he deserved the right to enter. And maybe he didn't. He turned toward me, swallowing hard. I told them I'm calling off the wedding. The words hung between us, heavy and hollow. They left me no choice, he continued. I can't force you to sign something you don't believe in. And I can't marry you while you feel betrayed. His voice cracked. I don't want to lose you. I held my breath, not because of the words, but because it was the first time he had taken responsibility instead of hiding behind them. He stepped closer. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking for a chance to make things right. I wanted to answer, but before I could, he reached into his coat and pulled out the prenup folder. My stomach twisted, but instead of handing it to me, he tore it in half.
Slowly,
Deliberately. Pieces of the contract fluttered onto my floor like dying birds. I should have done that yesterday, he whispered. For the first time in a long time I saw him, not the scared son, not the obedient heir, but the man I fell in love with months ago in a little bookstore. His eyes softened. I want a life with you, not with their conditions. I turned away, leaning on the counter to steady myself. Because the truth was, his gesture mattered. And yet, it didn't fix everything. You didn't stand up for me, I said quietly. When I needed you the most. I know, he whispered. It's the biggest regret of my life.
silence.
Not cold, just honest. I can't marry you right now, I said. His breath hitched. But I continued. I'm not walking away from the relationship. He blinked, confused. You're not. No, I said softly. But if we get married someday, it will be because you chose to be your own man, not because your parents allowed it. He closed his eyes, tears slipping down his face, not dramatically but quietly, the kind that comes from deep heartbreak. I'll prove it, he said. I'll prove I'm worthy of you. I didn't answer, because words wouldn't fix this. Only actions would. He left after a few minutes, not defeated but determined. For the first time, he wasn't walking toward his parents' wishes. He was walking toward himself. Months passed. We didn't rush. We didn't pretend everything was perfect. We rebuilt, slowly, tenderly, with honesty instead of blind hope. He moved out of his parents' home, took a job separate from the family business. Therapy, boundaries, distance. Things he once thought were impossible. But he did them. Not for me. For himself. And strangely, his relationship with his parents changed too, not by fixing, but by finally revealing what had been broken all along. One evening, we were watching a movie on my couch when he gently took my hand. Can we talk? He asked. I nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Not fancy, not expensive. Nothing like the flashy ring his parents chose the first time. My heart beat slower.
Softer.
He opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring. One small stone, nothing more. This time, he said quietly, I'm not asking for a wedding. I'm asking for a future. At your pace. In your terms. No family, no pressure, no conditions. I stared at the ring, not because it sparkled, but because I did. He continued, I want to build a life with you that isn't rooted in fear. I want to marry you, but only when you feel safe, when you trust me again. Tears finally filled my eyes, not from pain, but from healing. I didn't say yes. Not yet. But I didn't say no either. Instead, I held his hand and whispered, I'm proud of you. He smiled, the same shy smile I fell in love with in a bookstore long ago. And in that moment, I realized something his parents would never understand. Love isn't proved by contracts, or wealth, or power. Love is proved by courage, by growth, by choosing each other even when it's hard. So no, our wedding didn't happen 3 days later. It didn't happen 3 months later either. But someday, maybe when we're both ready, maybe when the past feels like a story instead of a wound, maybe then, our I do will finally belong to us. Only us.